news coming to you live from Algiers. I'm your host, Miriam Zin, and here are your top stories for tonight. 45 wounded Palestinian children and 6 wounded Algerians have arrived in Algeria on board 2 medically equipped army aircraft to receive treatment as part of the initiative of the President of the Republic. Next, Zionist occupation forces committed 6 massacres in the past 24 hours in the Gaza Strip, and the death toll rises amidst threats of invasion. Coming up, the International Court of Justice ordered Israelis' occupation to facilitate UN cooperation and humanitarian aid in the Gaza Strip. Welcome again to the program. We start with the latest news, where in Algeria, only a few hours ago, 45 wounded Palestinian children and 6 wounded Algerians, in addition to their companions, were evacuated from Cairo airport in Egypt on board 2 medically equipped aircrafts belonging to the Algerian Air Force in order to take care of them at the level of the military hospitals and army clubs in Algeria. This comes as part of the implementation of the initiative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. The initiative of the President aims to take in charge 450 injured Palestinian children in order to receive treatment for the wounds and to heal from the psychological effects of the barbaric Zionist bombing which targeted Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip. In this context, all capabilities and means have been provided for the success of this humanitarian operation, which will be followed by subsequent evacuation operations. This again clearly expresses Algeria's unconditional solidarity towards the brotherly Palestinian people in their plight.
Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you too. My parents, my dad, my mom and my siblings were at my grandpa's, and I was alone at home. They shelled the house with me inside, and when my mom heard that they bombarded our house, she ran and called the ambulance and firefighters, and they pulled me out of the rubbles. And here I am, thank God. But my grandpa and his family are still in Gaza, as well as my father's siblings.
الحمد لله بس درسيده لسه ضايلين بغزة وإخوته وبابا لا ماما.
Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza said that the occupation committed 6 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip, including 62 martyrs and 91 injuries to hospitals during the past 24 hours. This brings the death toll in the Gaza Strip, according to the same source, to rise to 32,552 martyrs and more than 74,000 injuries. This comes as the occupation says it is preparing to invade Rafah. Government media office in Gaza said that the Zionist occupation executed more than 200 displaced people inside the Al-Shifa medical complex and arrested another 1,000 from it. In addition to that, Gaza's government media office added that the occupation also threatened those present there to destroy the buildings above their heads or subject them to torture and execution. The head of the government media office, Salama Ma'rouf, confirmed that the occupation tanks bombed the buildings of the complex and set fire to large parts of it. At the time, while bombing of homes in the surrounding area continued.
Available information indicates that the occupation soldiers executed more than 200 displaced citizens inside the complex and arrested about 1,000 others, while medical teams and the displaced people inside the complex buildings are threatened with bombing and destroying the buildings above their heads, or they will go out for investigation, torture, or execution. According to the testimonies of some survivors from inside and around the Al Shifa medical complex, the occupation tanks bombed many of the complex buildings.
In the same context, the government media office in Gaza condemned the ongoing crime against the Al Shifa complex holding the occupation. The U.S. administration and the international community fully responsible for what is happening in medical institutions in Gaza amid the absence of a decisive international position to stop it.
We hold the Israeli occupation and the American administration as an actual partner in this aggression, and the international community fully responsible for the continuation of this massacre against the Al Shifa medical complex and against the medical staff, the wounded, the sick, and the displaced civilians.
The Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, said that only 10 of the 36 hospitals in Gaza are partially providing services and that the health system is barely surviving. Mr. Ghebreyesus reiterated his call for an immediate end to attacks on hospitals in Gaza. He also stressed that medical staff, patients, and civilians must be protected. The harrowing scenes of wounded Palestinian children flooding into Al-Aqsa Martyr Hospital in central Gaza have left international medical teams shaken. As the hospital grapples with the aftermath of relentless Zionist bombings, the situation paints a dire picture of the healthcare sector amidst nearly 6 months of ongoing Zionist aggression against the Gaza Strip. Hosam Berkan has more details.
Amidst the chaos, Al-Aqsa Martyr Hospital in Deir al-Balah stands as one of the few operational healthcare facilities in the central Gaza Strip. However, the sheer volume of patients, ranging between 600 and 800 daily, overwhelms its capacity. Hundreds of displaced individuals seeking refuge further strain its resources, painting a dire picture of the healthcare sector's plight.
It's catastrophic. There are so many injuries. They have overwhelmed the capacity of not just this hospital, but the entire healthcare system that has been targeted and collapsed months ago. And that on top of outbreaks of epidemics, malnutrition, and deterioration in people's general health, particularly people with chronic health diseases, you have a system that just is clearly not coping.
Patients are lying in the corridors. When we go looking, we don't find rooms for the patients. They are all in the corridors, either on mattresses or blankets on the floor, or a bed without basic components, so they are struggling a lot.
The ongoing influx of wounded, particularly children, has left international medical teams reeling, underscoring the urgent need for support amidst Gaza's healthcare crisis.
People are tired. Our team has been doing this for 5 days. We're exhausted. I can't imagine what the Gazan team, who's been here for 162 days, doing this 24/7, 162 days without resources, is dealing with. You asked me whether they had the resources to deal with these cases. No.
These medical teams in Gaza are working hard. Most of them have lost their children, their wives, but despite this, they are carrying on with their work. This shows the psychological pressure they are facing.
The Zionist occupation bombing campaigns, fuel shortages, and medical supply constraints have rendered 2/3 of Gaza's hospital inoperable, leaving facilities like Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital to bear the brunt of the crisis. As the humanitarian crisis worsens, the tensions from Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital serves as a sobering reminder of the urgent need for international intervention and support. With Gaza's healthcare system teetering on the brink of collapse, concerted efforts are needed to alleviate the suffering and provide essential aid to those in need.
The International Court of Justice ordered the Israeli occupation to cooperate with the United Nations without delay and to allow unimpeded access to humanitarian aid on a large scale in the Gaza Strip. A panel of judges said Palestinians in Gaza are facing worsening conditions of life and that famine and starvation were spreading. Hamas strongly condemned the killing of unarmed civilians by Zionist soldiers, as documented by Al Jazeera. The footage showed occupation. In the UK, a few dozen protesters entered the Department of Business and Trade in London on Thursday to call on the British government to end arms sales to the Zionist entity. The protesters from London for Free Palestine staged a sit-in in the lobby of the building, unfurled Palestinian flags and chanted, "Stop arming Israel." London for Free Palestine have joined some lawmakers and pressure groups like Campaign Against Arms, Trade and Safe World in calling on the Business and Trade Department to revoke arms exports licenses to Israel because of the war in Gaza. Reports from Hebrew media indicate that a shooting attack occurred on a bus north of Jericho in the Jordan Valley area of the West Bank. 3 settlers sustained injuries of varying severity. Further details on the circumstances surrounding the attack are awaited. Palestinian President Mr. Mahmoud Abbas has given approval for the formation of a new government led by economist Mohammed Mustafa following his appointment 2 weeks ago. The Palestinian Wafa news agency reported that the new government, comprising 23 ministers, will be sworn in before the president next Sunday. Mohammed Mustafa will serve as both the head of government and Minister of Foreign Affairs. Moving on to other developments, General Said Shingrihat, Chief of Staff of the People's National Army, conducted a work-in and inspection visit to the headquarters of the National Gendarmerie Command this Thursday. According to a statement from the Ministry of National Defense, the Chief of Staff of the NP stressed that the Army's keenness is directed specifically towards strengthening the foundations of Algeria's national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
From this standpoint, I'm aware of all the plots against our country. We are still in the People's National Army, under the leadership of the President of the Republic, the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, and the Minister of National Defense, very keen to redouble efforts in order to win the stakes of the current stage, especially regarding the preservation of Algeria's independence, the consolidation of the foundations of its national sovereignty and territorial integrity, and the preservation of strength and solidity of the bonds of its popular unity, which were steeled forever by millions of righteous martyrs with their pure blood.
In the same context, the Chief of Staff of the People's National Army also stressed the importance of the National Gendarmerie, which is a reliable tool for the Algerian army in the field of serving the law and the nation. Let's take a listen.
يمثل الدرك الوطني الذي هو جزء لا يتجزأ من الجيش الوطني الشعبي.
The National Gendarmerie, which is an integral part of the People's National Army, represents a fundamental pillar of security and stability in our country, as it contributes significantly, along with other security services, to the fight against terrorism and transnational organized crime. And it also plays an important role in rural areas and semi-urban, because it constitutes a link and communication tool with the people, which makes of this weapon an extremely important and effective tool, which we rely on greatly in the field of serving the law and the nation.
في مجال خدمة القانون والوطن.
Algeria called on the parties at issue in the Ukrainian crisis to reject confrontation and give priority to protecting civilians and their infrastructure, stressing the importance of fully respecting international law. In the Security Council meeting regarding the situation in Ukraine, the Minister Advisor of the Algerian Permanent Mission to the United Nations, Toufiq El-Koudri, affirmed Algeria's readiness to support any efforts aimed at maintaining international peace and security in the region and in the world, calling on the parties at issue to engage in a constructive dialogue based on the principles of peaceful settlement of disputes, pointing out to Algeria's firm position in this regard.
We call on the parties, once again, to reject confrontation and give priority to protecting civilians and their infrastructure. We should spare no efforts to alleviate the people's sufferings, and we should underline the necessity of fully respecting international law and international humanitarian law. Finally, we would like to emphasize our call on the parties at issue to engage in a constructive dialogue based on the principles of peaceful settlement of disputes, and Algeria will remain ready to support all efforts aimed at maintaining international peace and security in the region and in the world.
Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations emphasized during a meeting of the non-aligned movement the organization's General Assembly important role in addressing questions in relation to international peace and security. Let's have a listen.
Today, the NAM wishes to stress the importance of the current topic, role and authority of the General Assembly, and will address the following issue. First, NAM reaffirmed the role and authority of the General Assembly, including addressing questions related to international peace and security, as well as the importance of preserving the intergovernmental, inclusive, and democratic nature of the United Nations.
The French National Assembly approved on Thursday a proposed resolution which condemns the bloody and murderous repression of Algerians committed under the command of Police Prefect Maurice Papon on October 17, 1961 in Paris, during which hundreds tragically lost their lives. 67 deputies approved the resolution, while 11 from the far-right National Rally voted against. Additionally, the resolution expresses the desire to designate a day of remembrance for this massacre on the national calendar of official ceremonies. Moroccan human rights organizations condemned the Moroccan authorities' continued targeting of human rights defenders, suppression of opposition voices, and prevention of activities against normalization with the Zionist entity. Marwa Belaibor has more details on this.
The Moroccan Front for Supporting Palestine and Opposing Normalization strongly criticized the Moroccan authorities for arresting one of its members, Abdelrahman Zenkab, who was detained for expressing his disapproval with the government's inaction on the Gaza genocide in his online posts, where he condemned the attacks on the Gaza Strip and Palestine, highlighting the suffering inflicted by Zionists on innocent Palestinians.
The Moroccan human rights space has repeatedly made calls for the Moroccan authorities to stop systematically restricting freedom of opinion and expression, which harms the country's image and reputation in international human rights bodies, at a time when Morocco chairs the UN Human Rights Council.
Concerns over violations of digital freedom of expression and the protection of fundamental rights have increased in Morocco, affecting various groups including trade unionists, jurists, and professors. The Moroccan University of Education criticized the worsening human rights situation, including the harassment of trade unions and the use of repressive tactics against striking professors, including the temporary arrest and suspension of wages.
The Moroccan human rights space calls for the formation of a broad national front to combat authoritarianism and defend the basic rights and freedoms of Moroccans.
Amidst the grim situation of human rights and freedoms in Morocco, there is growing demand for unified action to challenge oppressive policies Repressive practices and harassment have led to protests from various sectors against government agencies, particularly those employing a security-focused approach to silence decent and suppress protests opposing their policies.
Russian President Vladimir Putin issued a stark warning stating that Russian forces would shoot down F-16 fighters supplied to Ukraine by the West, even if used from the airports of other countries. Putin's remarks came during a meeting with Russian Air Force pilots in response to Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba's insistence on acquiring F-15 planes in the coming months.
First, if they supply F-16s, they are talking about this and are training pilots. I think you understand that very well, better than most. This will not change the situation on the battlefield, and we will destroy the aircrafts, just as we destroy tanks now, as well as armored vehicles and other equipment, including multiple rocket launchers. Of course, if they are used from airfields in third countries, they become legitimate targets for us, wherever they might be located.
In the U.S., local companies in the port of Baltimore have expressed concern following the collision of a container ship with the bridge, which connects to one of the most important commercial ports in the eastern part of the country. They're worried about the impact it will have on thousands of workers who load and unload cargo ships. With the suspension of ship traffic in the port of Baltimore until further notice, the frequency of warnings has begun to rise in the United States regarding side effects, especially those related to the supplies of goods, coal, cars, and equipment.
We haven't had anything like this happen in Baltimore. All of a sudden, you're like, I saw it on the internet. I'm like, oh my God, a bridge collapsed somewhere. And then I'm 10 seconds in, oh my God, it happened here. So immediately you start transitioning the effects of this, and it turns into, uh-oh. We know that the maritime transportation is going to be cut off now, which is a huge part of what we do.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was it for tonight's program. Thank you for tuning in. Take care and have a good night.